Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Well, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, chances are that summer break is at your door, especially if your child goes to public school or a private school. And in the spirit of that, I thought that I would share something a little fun today. 10 things I don't miss about public school. You know, we're coming up on our 11th year of homeschooling this year. And even though we have been homeschooling now for over a decade, my kids, at least a lot of them, have spent various amounts of time in school. So that has given me a glimpse into the life of public schooling and into the life of homeschooling. And so that is where I'm getting my experience from today on just some pet peeves that I really had when my kids were in school. And you know, the things that I'm going to talk about today, they are not like all of the reasons that we homeschool. I've talked about that many times in my other videos. The things that I'm going to focus on today might have helped us to make the decision to homeschool, but as I mentioned earlier, they're just things that really seem to get on my nerves when we were doing public school with our kids. And you know, the reason that I really decided to do this video is because I am trying to encourage those parents who might be feeling overwhelmed having their kids home from the summer because you're just not sure what to do with them for all this time. You're not really used to having them with you. And I also really want to encourage those parents who are being affected by these vaccine mandates. I know that things are up in the air for so many of you. You're not even sure where your kids are going to go to school, if they're going to go to school. And I just really wanted to point out to you that you're not missing much in the public school system, and you really should consider homeschooling them. So that is my plug for homeschooling. And now I'm going to get on to 10 things that I don't miss about public school. So the first thing are the annual lice epidemics. And when I say annual lice epidemics, I'm being pretty nice, because the lice epidemics happen more than once a year. They usually happen several times a year, where there would be lice going around the schools. The problem, as if that weren't bad enough, the problem is that our school district takes the stance that lice is not a health issue, it is a social issue. So what that means is that the school does not notify the parents of classmates who have been infested with lice. So rather than giving parents a heads up so that they can, keep an eye out, check their kids' heads, and, just be a little proactive about it, no, they don't say a word. And before you know it, there are entire families who have been infested with lice because they were never told about it to begin with. So the second thing that really I don't miss about public school is along the same lines as the lice. It's the contagious illnesses. Because you know what? My kids got sick even more than they got lice. And unfortunately, my kids got lice pretty often because of the kids in their classes and us not being notified about it. And I want you to imagine, I think I had 9 kids the last time that I had kids in public school. And imagine trying to go through a family of 11 getting the lice out of everyone's hair. It's not fun. But anyway, going back to the contagious illnesses, you've got all the time going around in schools, there are things like pink eye, stomach bugs, the flu, colds, this weird rash that always goes around our school district for some reason called the 5th disease. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about it, but these things are constantly being passed from one child to the next because they are with each other day after day in these cramped classrooms. And so what ends up happening, especially in families that are larger like mine, is that the kids start passing it in the family, one child to the next. And before you know it, you've got kids who are missing a lot of school because they're bringing all kinds of stuff home with them. Well, the school administrators, they show so much concern when kids are sick. They show concern because they are missing too much school. And they will not hesitate to tell you when they think that your kids are missing too much school. But they never seem to take into account the fact that the reason that your kids are missing so much school is because they got sick in school. Anyway, the third thing that I do not miss about public school is feeling like a secondary parent. No parent should ever feel like a secondary parent, and no parent should ever feel like they have to answer to another adult for their own child. I am sorry, but a parent should not have to ask permission for their child to miss school. They should not have to ask for their child to miss school. I'm not sure if I said that, but they should not have to ask permission for their child to go on vacation with them. And that is one thing that really irks me, that these schools make families fill out forms to see if these field trips are educational so that they get approved for these kids to be missing school while their families are on vacations. You know what? It's none of the school's business if your family is going on vacation. These are your kids. Family comes first. School does not come first. And no school should ever have the authority to tell a parent that they cannot take their child to school or not take them on field trips. Another thing that really, really irks me is the number of parents that I have heard from who have talked to teachers and to just other support staff at school, people who have children with ADHD, and are trying to explain to the people at the school that they're trying to treat this naturally. And yet they have these school authority figures just trying to push and push and push medication on them. And a lot of parents begin to feel overwhelmed, and they start to feel like they have to do what the teachers are telling them to do. No, you are the parent, and I think we need to make that loud and clear for any parent who has kids in school. So the fourth thing that really, really irks me about school and that I don't miss about public school is the homework, because kids are in school 6 to 7 hours a day, and somehow that just isn't enough time for them to finish their work. I mean, they're basically like really good employees who are going to take their work home with them, except kids don't get paid for this job. They are forced to bring their work home with them. After spending 7 hours a day in school, they come home and then have 2 hours of homework. And I would say, well, what about family time? But I think we all know that schools are not concerned with family time. Again, schools think that school is central to everything in a child's life, and it shouldn't be that way. Homework, in my opinion, shouldn't even exist. So the next thing that I don't miss about public school is the PC culture in the schools. And it is far worse today than it was when my kids were in school. But even when my kids were in school, there were a lot of things that were going on that were upsetting both parents and teachers. Back in my kids' elementary school, now no matter what you think about these holidays like Thanksgiving and Halloween and Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day were all but banned. Christmas became a winter celebration, and Easter became a spring break. And there were a bunch of parents and a couple of teachers who actually came up to me and asked me if I would speak to the principal about the things that were going on in this school, because kids were they were not allowed to celebrate anything anymore. They were not allowed to have fun anymore. And they asked me to be the spokesperson. I don't know why. Maybe because, if you watch my channel, you know that I'm kind of outspoken in that way. But yeah, I even talked to the local news. They came to my house about this, because the thing is that the kids were not even allowed to exchange Valentine's Day cards with one another, because the principal said that it would take time away from test prep. They were also not allowed to celebrate, I mentioned this earlier, St. Patrick's Day. And the teachers just wanted to do something fun, like with leprechauns and stuff like that. But no, my daughter's teacher actually had to come up to me and tell me that they were going to have a clandestine green party in their class. They were calling it the green party because they were not allowed to call it St. Patrick's Day. And so she was just asking if I would be willing to bring anything green in for the party. Well, so we did that, and they got away with it. But just a month or two later, we found out that there was one holiday that the school was completely behind, and indeed they had an all-out celebration for it, inviting parents to come and join in the festivities. And this was for Cinco de Mayo. And I've got to point out that we have a very minute percentage of Mexican students in our school district. So why is it that one holiday was completely fine and was allowed in the school when all of these other holidays were completely wiped out, they were banned, and you had to basically be secretive about celebrating them at all? So, that was just the beginning. And I can't even begin to talk about the PC stuff that goes on in school nowadays. Every time that I read articles about the things that are going on in school nowadays, like with boys being given access to girls' locker rooms and such, I am so eternally happy that I am homeschooling my kids. So the seventh thing that I don't miss about public school is the standardized testing culture. Because we all know that true education comes from cramming kids' heads full of useless factoids that they're never going to use again. You know, the only thing that really matters in life is that a child knows how to completely fill in a bubble on a test. And you know, I'm being facetious, but it's really sad when you have children in our school district. They don't just take one standardized test every year. They take multiple standardized tests every year. And that is preceded by weeks and weeks and weeks of test prep in school, after school programs. They change after school programs that were once fun. They change those into test prep things. And everything that actually interested kids in wanting to learn is completely wiped out because of this standardized testing. And I think that we all know that standardized testing has nothing to do with true education. It has to do a lot of times with money. That's what it's about. And these school districts, they don't care about educating kids. They care about getting funding. So the seventh thing that I don't miss about public school, and you know, some of you might think that it's not a big deal, but to me it was, early mornings. When you are a mom of many, and I don't mean a mom of many like 3 or 4 kids, I mean a mom of many. As I mentioned before, I had 9 kids when my kids were in public school. I think my youngest, well, no, she was my youngest then. I had just had my 9th, I think, right before I took them out. But anyway, it was hard getting them all ready every single morning. And just every morning, it didn't matter if we had the stuff laid out the night before, like their shoes and backpacks and clothes and everything. It never failed that the next morning it would be gone, just vanished. You know, it was like we had some little gremlin in our house who would just misplace everything while we were all sleeping. So every morning was a mad rush of trying to get the kids out the door because they had to be at school so early. So what ended up happening is there would be a lot of yelling going on, trying to get everybody ready, a lot of crankiness. And that is the last memory that my kids would have of their family while they were at school, was of everybody yelling at each other and mom being especially crabby. No, not good. So the 8th thing that I don't miss about public school is walking to school in the snow and the freezing rain. And you know, I realize that a lot of school districts bus kids to school nowadays. Our school district does not do that. They only bus students who get support from the intermediate unit. And I have to mention that at the time that my kids were in school, one of my daughters did get speech therapy for the intermediate unit, but for some reason that did not qualify her to get bused to school. So what would happen is twice a day, because my daughter was in half-day kindergarten, so I would have to walk to school in the morning, then I would have to walk there to pick up my daughter from kindergarten, and then I would have to walk back again for the rest of the kids. And so in all kinds of weather, I would have to be packing up the babies, packing up the toddlers, and we would have to be trudging through the snow, through the freezing rain if they didn't, you know, call school off for the day. And I have to say that I'm going to be honest, it was infuriating to me because we had a little boy who lived right next door to us who got bused to school, and he was in my daughter's class in school. So he lived in an apartment that was attached to our house. So he would get picked up and would get bused to school to get dropped off in my daughter's class, and we would all be walking all the way up to school. And yeah, I don't miss those days at all. Bundling up all the kids, having to slip and slide everywhere with the stroller. Now our winter mornings are spent sipping hot chocolate in the living room and watching, you know, some specials that are on, or just doing fun things and not freezing to death and, you know, trying not to get frostbite on the way to school. So the 9th thing that I don't miss about public school are bomb threats. Yeah, they happened pretty much here. I can't even count the number of times that I would drive past the school only to find all the kids standing outside again. And yeah, I would usually pull over and say to one of the teachers, you know, hey, what's going on? And, you know, sometimes it was fire drills, but no, most of the time it was bomb threats. And, you know, I even have to add that on top of the bomb threats were the school lockdowns, which happened probably even more frequently than the bomb threats did. And, you know, these school lockdowns were brought on by the students. My daughter had in her second grade class a boy, he was an expert at making the school lockdown. All he had to do was, start hitting the teacher. He would yank off some of her jewelry. He would run around the class, knock all the bins of books out. He would throw some desks. Bam, school locked down. And my daughter would come home from school a nervous wreck every single day. Don't miss that. Not at all. So the 10th thing, we're already at the 10th, is unexcused absences. And this kind of has to go along with feeling like a secondary parent, because I'm sorry, but the school should never be able to tell a parent what is and is okay, what is and is not okay for the reasons for their kids to be missing school. Because again, parents are parents. School administrators, school secretaries, teachers, faculty, they're not the parents. Parents should have the final say. And our school district, they loved to throw out unexcused absences like people throwing out candy at a parade. It was just everywhere. Unexcused absences galore. And some of the things that our family got unexcused absences for was, at one point, it was like the third or fourth bomb threat. And I decided to sign my kids out early that day when I found out that there was yet another one. And I was told by the principal that my kids would have an unexcused absence for the rest of the day because I signed them out because there was a bomb threat. Another reason that we got an unexcused absence was because we lived on a hill, and our hill was extremely icy, and they did not call school off for the day. They just gave like a 2-hour delay. But our street, since it was a no outlet, had not been salted, not been plowed. So I called the school and I told them why the kids were not going to make it. Again, boom, unexcused absence, because they thought that since they gave us a 2-hour delay, they thought that was fine. So nope, they gave us one for that. And another reason was because I was in the hospital being monitored right before I had one of my 9th baby. She wasn't moving enough. And I had my daughter, who was in kindergarten at the time, with me. And so I was like all worked up, and I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to get my daughter to kindergarten that day because I was in the hospital with her and had no one to take her. I called the school secretary, and she said, well, it's going to be an unexcused absence because the absence has nothing to do with your daughter. I was livid. I was completely livid. And here's the thing. One thing that this really taught my kids that I don't like that it taught my kids is that when it comes to giving excuses to the school, it pays to lie. Parents want to teach their children to tell the truth at all times, but look at what's happening in these schools. If parents are calling these schools and are giving the secretary or the school staff, truthful reasons that their kids are missing school, they are getting unexcused absences. Yet if a parent would call the school and just lie every single time and just say they're sick, they're sick, they're sick, and never really give the real reason, that's okay. That works. And what kind of a message is that sending to kids? So anyway, those are 10 things that I don't miss about school. I'm sure that I could think of so many more, but I don't want to rattle on all night. And I would love if you have any reasons that you don't miss school or things that you did not like about school, pet peeves that you had. I would love if you would leave a comment over on my Instagram page. I will leave that in the description box because YouTube has disabled my comments. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave that link in the description box as well. And I hope you have a great day.